Hi, I'm Brad Thomas with NBC Sports Edge, joined by Von Delzell and Eric Froton, and this is the College Football Live Q&A. During this session, you guys can ask all the questions you want in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. Vaughn, did you have any fun bets this week so far?
Oh man, I've been in the NBA groove, so I've been living large. We had a big 8-0 sweep on that 15-day slate. We had a 2-0 night last night. A little mixed reviews in the middle. We're not going to spend too much time talking about, but yeah, excited to have college football today. We got a huge game between Texas TCU, UCF Tulane, tons of more games. How about you, Eric? Anything going on with you?
Yeah, I had a nice night last night. I put out my column and recommended Jake Haener over 300.5 yards. He dutifully went over that against UNLV. That worked out. And also, I played the heck out of Jordan Mims, the running back for Fresno State. He opened at 12.5 points on Prize Picks, 12.5 fantasy points. That then bumped up to 14.5. He ended up at 15.2. So I had them at both levels, and I'm looking forward to quite a few Prize Picks cashes, so long as everything goes well today, of course.
I think my favorite bet came on the other football. I had Lyon versus Nice, both teams to score. It was one penalty missed, made the next penalty, and then in the 90th minute, they rewarded a penalty for the other team. I cashed, but it was far too sweaty. But let's get into this week's slate for college football. Let's start with the big game, the game of the week. Number 4, TCU at Texas. Texas is a 7-point favorite. The total set at 65, and I'll start with this one. I actually did my column on this. If anybody likes sweaty bets, go ahead and tell me. I am on the under. Yes, that's right. The under 65. This is a game where it's probably going to end at 60 points, 63 points, and I'm going to be nervous every single possession. But with both teams, what they want to do is they want to establish the run. Kendre Miller is one of the most explosive running backs in college football, and Bijan Robinson is probably the best running back in college football. The problem for TCU, and it makes sense why Texas is a 7-point favorite, Texas has a great running defense. They're top 30 in yards allowed. They are top 10 per PFF. I see them being able to stop the run and kind of making Max Duggan do most of the work here. A little fun fact, actually, Texas, their last 5 home games, 1-4 to the under. In this matchup, this meeting between the two, we know it's a different TCU, so I'm not going to get too caught up in the trends here. But TCU in Texas has hit the under in all but one in their last 5 matchups. Eric, do you have any plays in this game?
Yeah, well, obviously this is the big game where we've all been waiting for this TCU wagon, 7-1-1 against the spread this season. So not only are they winning their games outright, but they're doing it to the preference of we betters. When it comes to this, obviously it's at Texas. Everybody, there's the 7 points. I even saw it climb above the 7.5 hook for a little while there. I believe FanDuel yesterday had it up there, and then that has come back down to the straight 7 mark. Because I am a gambling man, I am actually backing TCU here, and I'm going to take the points. Reason why is we've seen Texas have good games. There's obviously Alabama. They had an 80% post-game win expectancy against Alabama. Managed to fumble that game away. That's sort of been their thing, like they play well, just well enough. But when it comes to the actual pulling the game out, the complete full contest, they haven't been able to do that in a couple of these important games. And when you come to TCU, look, all of their games have been close for the most part when it comes to, coming down. The 2 games that were the closest, 41% post-game win expectancy, another 45%er, for TCU there against Oklahoma State. So I think that they can keep this close. I think this will be a 1-score game. I don't feel comfortable giving up that full 7 points. Again, I jumped on it when it was at FanDuel at 7.5. We're still at 7 here. I don't think this is I think it's close. And with Texas's penchant for making mistakes in important, crucial situations, I am going to take the 7 points respectfully, Brad. And I know Vaughn has a play coming up here where I think we're going to have a pizza bet.
Oh, well, yeah, we did. Eric and I had a pizza bet a couple nights ago. We rearranged another one. I'm a Bulls fan. He's a Celtics guy. And yeah, he cashed that. I was kind enough to let him do a money line bet. So
You were
we're
nice
coming
enough
up
to do
on
money
some.
line on that, Vaughn. Okay, so
Yes.
that needs to be
The
said.
7 was too
You
many
would have
points for the
covered.
Bulls. Yeah, definitely would have covered. But your burger bet, we'll see what happens here because I'm taking Texas. It's gonna be my best bet this week. We cashed a very easy one with Air Force and Army under, of course, naturally. This spot though, you guys hit on a lot of things here. Obviously, Quinn Ewers and Bijan Robinson are a dynamic duo, 1-2 punch. Ewers has been very significant in the wins this season with 11 touchdowns and 2 picks, compared to 2 touchdowns and 3 picks in those 1.5 losses because he did get hurt in one of those games. But you look at Bijan, season-ending injury last year. He's coming back in them career highs in every category. I'm not sure TCU is going to be able to limit him at all. But speaking on Max Duggan, so you guys talked about him. We watched the game against West Virginia. While he put up good numbers, he didn't look quite himself, in my opinion. And I saw the backup quarterback warming up a couple of times, which gave me some significant notice. Maybe something's up with him. Now there's reports out that his knee isn't 100%. Last week against Texas Tech, season lows across the board. Yards, completions, attempts, everything. I think Texas is going to get after him today, and I think that's why we're seeing the 7. The Sharps are going to be on the Longhorns. The public's going to be on TCU. I'm not going to be the fool again, in my opinion. Taking how I took Tennessee last week, how I took Alabama earlier in the season. We're done with that. We're on the Longhorns today, so let's run it up. That's my best bet.
Well, you better hope you get the Quinn Ewers that threw 4 touchdowns against Oklahoma, as opposed to the Quinn Ewers that threw 3 interceptions against Oklahoma State. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. You better get the good one today.
I'll say TCU's defense does not scare me one bit, and TCU has gotten away with some games this year. I felt like they were lucky to win. So we'll see how long that 7-1-1 ATS train can truly run.
Let's roll over to our best bets since Vaughn already gave his. I want to talk about Vaughn 5-5 in his best bets. Eric's still leaderboard leader at 8-2, and I am close behind at 7-3. Eric, roll into yours because I locked this in last night. Tell me your best bet.
Oh yeah, you'll trust me. Before I give any picks out, when it comes to player props, trust you, I lock it in before I give it out because I know what's going to happen. It's going to move. So brace yourselves. Amari Huggins-Bruce, wide receiver, Louisville at Clemson this week is my best bet. I'm taking the under 49.5 receiving yards on FanDuel. Reason why it's very, very logical. Amari Huggins-Bruce, over the past 3 games, we've seen his snap counts decrease. 3 games ago, 26 routes he run. 2 games ago, 20. Last week, 9 routes run. And that's important because it's when he ran those routes. Last week, which was my People's Parlay, which was Louisville over James Madison. It was a 7.5-point spread. They ended up winning by 24. Now, importantly, when Amari Huggins-Bruce did his damage was in the 4th quarter. So the last real drive they had was with about 9 minutes left, ended up ending in a 11-yard touchdown receptions for Huggins-Bruce. That happened with 6.5 minutes left in the game. At the time they scored, they were already up 3 scores, 17 points. That made it 24. And ostensibly ended the game at that point with 6 minutes left for James Madison, which, again, is a group of 5 team. Their first season in the FBS, and they're out there playing Louisville late in the season where Louisville is just looking to get rid of them and move on to their AAC opponent. This week, obviously, we have Clemson, okay? Huggins didn't start last week. He's been taken over for that starting role. And in order for him to get the kind of volume to clear the 49.5 yards mark, it's going to have to come later in the game, in my opinion, with Clemson up big and them in a prevent defense role. Against this Clemson defensive line where you have legitimately 2 probably top 15 at worst top 20 picks in the NFL draft. You have Trenton Simpson, their middle linebacker, is a star. He is also probably a first-round pick at worst at day 2. This is an extremely talented defense. I don't think Malik Cunningham, who is projected to be at the 179.5 passing yards, you're expecting 50 of those to go to Huggins-Bruce on a limited snap count where he already got passed on the depth chart. This is an easy wide receiver under for me. Go get it. 49.5 yards under on FanDuel. And I believe, no, not on DraftKings. It's on FanDuel, 49.5 under.
I already locked it in, so I'm trusting you there. For my best
I gave
bet,
it to you last night, Brad.
I know. I was so excited. So excited. I was like, okay, locked it in. For my best bet, Maryland at Penn State. I'm taking Penn State team total over 33. I do believe the number is 33.5 now. I don't care about the hook, but I'm still playing it. Listen, so let's talk about this. This is one of my write-up plays as well. They're going against a Maryland team who have struggled to stop the run. So the double-headed monster that Penn State have, great. They're going against a Maryland team who struggled in the secondary. So I don't care if it's Aller or Clifford, whoever lines up at quarterback. I think they'll be able to have their way with them. My favorite thing about this bet, we know how dominant Penn State has been, especially at home, outside of the games he played against the number 2 team in Ohio State, the number 3 team in Michigan. Maryland is 65th in touchdown rate on defense. They are allowing touchdowns on 28% of the drives this season. I know that Tulia Tagovailoa is coming back for Maryland, but I don't think they're going to have long sustained drives. It's going to be tempo for them, which means Penn State is going to have the ball in their hands a ton of times. So it's a numbers game. If they're allowing touchdowns on 28% and Penn State has the ball on a lot of possessions, that's a lot of points scored by the Nittany Lions. I love this number. I love this play. I think they get to 35 as their floor. So that's my best bet. Going for 8-3. It should already be 8-2, but Tanner Morgan wanted to take a 5-yard sack. All we needed was 10 yards in that game. But I want to invite everyone who's watching, be sure to ask your questions. Let's answer some questions right now. Make sure you drop a like. Let's go with Chad real fast. Cash fading Cuse versus Pitt after fading versus Notre Dame. On paper, it would seem that the Seminoles match up great, but I can't shake the feeling that these two are the same team from the close loss to Clemson to embarrassing underperformance against mediocre conference teams. Oof. There's a lot to unpack there. So are you asking? Well, let me just tell you this stat. The 9th most public bet team right now is Florida State, -7 at 69%. I don't have an opinion on that game. Do either of you guys have opinions on that game?
I do a little bit. What I found really interesting and is kind of indicative of the way the Syracuse season has gone is Sean Tucker, who is right now, right around the RB5 when it comes to being a 2023 NFL draft running back. He's a guy who came in and had a couple of hot weeks, was incredible last season with a different offensive coordinator for Syracuse where they were just pounding the ball. This week on FanDuel, he is listed at 64.5 rushing yards. That is a stark drop. He was in the 100-yard mark in the first, month and a half or so every single week. And we've really seen Syracuse pivot away from that sort of power run game with the new offensive coordinator that came in this year, Robert Anae. I am really apprehensive about taking Syracuse the way that they have played. It seems like the market correction has happened on that team. And, given the fact they are playing in the whatever the Carrier Dome is called now this week with this game is the one thing I think they kind of have going in their favor because it just seems like they've been figured out. And I have real reservations. I'm on Florida State, for this. I don't feel comfortable with it. These teams are going in two different directions. You have Mike Norvell, who it's year 4. He's got his full team dialed in and ready to go. This is a fully formed unit, which he's been working towards. And I feel like just Florida State is just a clearly superior team that is heading in the right direction as opposed to Syracuse. So I listen, Chad sees what I see, and that's why he's kind of faded in the past couple of weeks, and it's worked out for him. Yeah. So I will continue to back your instincts there, Kyle Chad, my friend, and I think you're on the right track.
Awesome.
I'll give a special. I have a real quick brief breakdown for the Pitt game. If that total moves down, because I see people betting the over, a lot of tickets coming on the over. It's only at 41.5, but the total hasn't moved. When totals hit 40 or lower in college football, the under has cashed 16 out of 26 times. It's 16, 9, and 1. One push, so 64% since the start of last year. This year it's 11-6-1 to the under, so still 64%. So if the Pitt game creeps down to 40 or 40.5, it's not a bad bet to the under, even though it's a scary bet. So they're playing Virginia, who has no offense.
None whatsoever. Year 2, we answered this question. We have Vaughn on Texas -7 and Eric on TCU +7.
Marty
Brad on the under, and Brad
I'm on the under.
Burger, baby.
I'm on the under.
One.
I'm on to the sweatiest one.
Scariest bet of them all.
Listen, I don't ever look at public numbers, but it actually made me smile because whenever I see the public on an over and I'm on the opposite side, I'm like, or like, on the other side, I'm just like, oh, great. Heck yeah, this is perfect. Like totals is where I don't mind fading the public at all. Marty has the sweaty play of the day, Missouri +19 on the road against Tennessee.
Everyone is on Tennessee today, and the spread came back from 20.5 down to 19.5.
Yeah.
19.5 is definitely a more appealing number for the public to go bet into that, because now you're getting a 20. And as we know, there could be an extra missed point or two in college football. So I don't hate it. I think the under is probably the best bet in that game if Missouri is to cover. That's another very, very high total. But
is it like
I saw a lot of sportsbooks saying they would love to have Missouri plus the 19.5 and the under in this game. That would be the best results for the sportsbooks.
That makes sense. And with Missouri, what's really been underrated about them this year, because last year their defense was like a sieve, especially their rush defense in the first half of the year until they brought in Al Davis, not the Oakland Raiders, patriarch, but the well-regarded defensive line coach who really turned that entire rush defense around. And you've seen it's the entire defense itself has turned around. They're one of the top 10 pass defenses in the country, Missouri, and you don't even realize it. What they want to do is they want to slow the game down. Okay, I mean, it's very simple. They don't want Tennessee out there and letting Hendon Hooker and Tillman and Jalen Hyatt run a track meet on them all game. They're going to want to slow it down. That's an issue where their run game hasn't been what it was last year, where they had Tyler Beatty, who is a NFL caliber running back and proven he could do it out of the backfield. He was just an all-purpose weapon. They don't have that this year. New starting quarterback Hunter Cook. You have Nathaniel Pete, who came over from Stanford, but even he has been taken over by a former walk-on, Corey Schrager. So it's been, the offense has not been able to hold their ground for Missouri. So you're asking a lot of the defense here. They're going to want to slow the game down. They play at the 91st pace in the country. Marty has done a pretty good job, frankly, on this show with some of the stuff he's put in this year.
Yeah.
He's pretty darn good capper, so I certainly respect him. I am staying away from the Missouri-Tennessee play, but I do think there's a path. And I do think they've managed to slow down some teams and just at least be a problem and stay within those three scores. Teams aren't blowing out Missouri this year.
No.
So I do think that's a lot of points, and I would probably lean that way, despite the fact that Tennessee has been great. This is really the last team that Tennessee has to worry about in their schedule. They're just about done. It's Missouri, and they got at South Carolina and at Vanderbilt. So, look, this is the last hurdle they have to clear. They probably just want to get there and get out of there with a win and move on. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'll say this too. Two things. Anyone in the chat too, Marty, he tweets us and he puts out his stats and his numbers, trends he's looking at. I think that's a really cool thing to do. And, we're here to encourage and teach you guys. And whether we win or lose, you're learning something, whether or not, if we're right or wrong, depending on our bets. Maybe next year we can get a fan vote in there inspired by people like Marty who are constantly in the chat every Saturday. And quick one, because you mentioned Al Davis, Eric. Who was Al Davis's last draft pick for the Raiders?
Al Davis's last draft, was it?
I'll give you a hint.
Let's see. Well, it has to be a seventh rounder. I was going to say Ruggs, but I mean,
no. It was him and I went to the same high school, and he was a supplemental draft pick.
Oh, okay. Riddle me this. Who is it?
The great Terrell Pryor of Ohio State was
our
last ever draft pick.
Wow.
Supplemental draft, because if you remember, Terrell was selling stuff for his tats, so he got all inked up for the NFL.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun fact: my boy
Wow,
Terrell
that is a
was
great
the
fact.
allegations
That's a great
left.
fact.
And too bad
That
it
is a
worked
great
out.
fact.
It just didn't work out for the Raiders. Terrell
Yeah.
Pryor career with the Browns.
Take this question, Eric. What about Shipley over 90.5 rush yards?
It's up to 90.5. I had seen it for most of the week. I know at DraftKings this morning, I checked it out at 88.5. I think it was a little bit juiced to the over, as it should be, because let's face it, this is a pretty darn good matchup for Clemson. I had already talked about the matchup a little bit there, of course, in one of my plays against Louisville. But yeah, this is very intriguing because why would Clemson want to risk putting the ball in the air too much against the Cardinals, where they've had some spotty play? With, as we saw, DJU was really good for the first 6 weeks, but then we've seen him and the Klubnik factor come in, and he was relieved. Klubnik came in last game. Klubnik was then taken out. He is, on the thin side for a true freshman quarterback, despite his 5-star billing status and QB1, acumen in this year's class. But why would you want to risk it? Why would you want to hang yourself out there when you really don't have to? I don't think Louisville, at least Malik Cunningham, as I've already kind of stated, I don't think he's going to be able to move the ball particularly effectively through the air. If he does, it's going to have to be outside of structure, since he is simply not a pocket passing quarterback. And with the game script, I think that Dable wants to have is he wants to control the clock, and he's going to want to be able to press the advantage over a smaller Louisville Cardinal defensive line, where they have an excellent edge defender. Yaya Diaby is probably a day 2 pick next year. Why would you want to risk having him come around for a strip sack, throwing the ball too much? It's just everything in my estimation really does point to that over. See if you can get it for DraftKings at 88.5 yards. I'm on it for the aptly named Hindu Kush. I love it.
Yeah, every yard counts, and because we hit Chase Brown last week over 135.5. He had 136.
Yeah.
Every yard
that
counts.
sweat. We talked about that.
Yeah, get the 88.5 if you can get it. You might be thanking yourself.
It is the season for the absolutely pressurized RB overs. The Chase Browns. We see in the Texas game, obviously Bijan Robinson, he started at 107. He started at 107 this week.
Yeah.
It was almost criminal how low that is for Bijan.
Last time I checked, it was close into 120, I thought.
Yeah, it's like 118.5, I think, right now is what it's spiked to. So these week in, week out running backs, 100 yards is all early in the season. I look at that and I start raising eyebrows. But now, where it's been done week after week, those dependable running backs, week in, week out, we know what their carry load is going to look like. They're going to get 20 to 25. They're really been some pretty solid plays.
Yeah, like getting Chase Brown at the beginning of the season for 54 yards. He would cover it in the first quarter, and you're like, yes.
Absolutely. Brett Bielema loves to run the ball, baby.
And really a big thing about we had a lot of success out of week 0 and week 1, and Eric will definitely say this as well, because we sat in my living room and we watched Illinois their scrimmage versus each other, and we went back and watched their spring ball, and we were like, wow, Chase Brown is demolishing this defense that's supposed to be really good.
Yeah,
we didn't even know how good Illinois' defense was going to be, but we knew Chase Brown was going to be amazing this year, and he's leading the country in rushing yards. It's amazing.
Let's roll over into the People's Parlay. This shows you, I want to talk about our records in the People's Parlay, and this shows you how hard it is to hit parlays. The People's Parlay record's 4-6 for plus 2.48 units. We all have winning records. Eric 6-4, Brad 5-4-1, Vaughn 6-4. It's funny that we have a losing record in People's Parlay, but we're going to get them all together this time. Vaughn, start with your first.
But the money,
profit.
Because it's the profit.
Yes, that's the key.
Dollar bills, y'all.
Yeah, that's the key here. So we roll again this week. I go with Texas as my team. You guys might hate it. You might be scared of it. But like I said, Duggan coming off the lowest yards, completions, attempts, touchdowns, second most sacks taken. We don't have to worry about Quinn Ewers. I think Bijan Robinson is trustworthy enough. He's proclaiming that Derrick Henry status in college football here, where he's just taking the load and carrying his team. So I think the real Texas shows up today.
Awesome. I'll roll into Penn State. I talked about the total. I'm on Penn State -10. I know it is a public bet, but it makes total sense here. You have a quarterback who's been out due to injury, a quarterback who's going to be under pressure a lot, and a defense who is allowing less than 15 points per game if you take out the two best teams in the country. Penn State rolls this one. I have this one, 35-13, somewhere around that mark. Eric, what's yours?
That's a comfy one. I like that.
I think so,
Absolutely,
too.
sir. Also, I'm going with LSU -3. I also, gosh, this game opened for the over-under at 57.5 and went right on up to the 64, right around where we're hanging it at right now, depending on the book you're looking at. So that tells you where the betting public thinks this game is going. And frankly, I agree. With LSU, obviously coming off the big inspirational win, is this a letdown spot? Respectfully, we do have a battle-tested coach in Brian Kelly. We've seen him obviously navigate the waters of Notre Dame over the several years. He's pretty much a guaranteed double-digit wins, taking that over to LSU. And the big advantage they have today, and the reason why I really like them is, look, the heart and soul of Arkansas has been KJ Jefferson. He's been exceptional. I really think in terms of his performance from a NFL draft point of view, he's been so much more clean and consistent and precise than I think people realize. I definitely put him in one of my Debbie Dynasty articles a couple of weeks ago. He's banged up. And he was banged up last week against Liberty, and that was a major contributing factor because Arkansas lost to Liberty 21-19 in a game where they had a 67% post-game win expectancy. But when you have a banged-up KJ Jefferson, and we've seen the head coach Sam Pittman this week in the lead-up has expressed real reservation where he might not play or he might play. But even if he does play, Pittman has said, we're not sure what we're getting out of him. He was in really bad shape last week. Even if he plays, we could still see Malik Hornsby, the backup quarterback, who, while absolutely dynamic running the ball, like you cannot take that away from Malik Hornsby. He frankly could end up being a guy that transitions if he doesn't, isn't able to read defenses correctly and make the throws. We could see him transition to wide receiver easily. He's got that athleticism, but his passing acumen is nowhere near the level of KJ Jefferson, who, as I discussed, I think he's been one of the more underrated quarterbacks in all of the FBS. So that's a major problem here for a Arkansas team where we already know they have arguably the worst defense outside of Vanderbilt in the SEC. 120th against the pass, 11th worst against the pass, 100th in rushing performance. And again, as we discussed, they've thrown away a couple games they should have won. It wasn't just last week against Liberty. Against Texas A&M, they had a 70% post-game win expectancy, and they drastically outplayed Texas A&M. But they couldn't pull it out despite Texas A&M having a substandard quarterback play. I think that's a problem against LSU. We've seen them get better and better as the season's gone along. They dropped that close game to Florida State, which they should have won, 60% post-game win expectancy, and they couldn't pull it out. I just think with LSU going in the right direction, Arkansas is heading in the opposite direction. This is just a perfect storm for me, especially with the quarterback issue. I'm high on LSU, -3, probably up to -3.5, might get to 4 by the time the game kicks off.
Yeah, LSU, when I saw it open, I was like, that's a bet you just got to jump on. But yeah, I think this probably still playable, Xavier, if that's what you're asking. Go ahead and lock it in. But before we get to the second big game, I would invite you guys to play Notre Dame Pick'em, Irish Pick'em. Play college football Pick'em on the NBC Sports Predictor app for your chance to win $10,000 every week. It's free and easy to play. From first downs to touchdowns, you can win big. Feel free to enter with plenty of cash prizes. Go download on the NBC Sports Predictor app. So let's get into it. My alma mater, UCF, taking on Tulane. One of the best starts for Tulane since, I believe, 2008. Tulane a -1.5 point favorite. The total set at 54.5. And call me biased, but I am on
I am going to call you biased, Brad.
Yeah.
But wait.
You went to UCF. You wrestled for them. Come on. Of course you're biased.
But wait, let's say this. I was right about UCF last time, wasn't I?
Fair.
You were pretty close to being wrong about them, too.
I was very close.
But-
I thought that was probably the wrong read, but the money cash. Sometimes better be lucky than good.
It's still green. The money was still
The
green.
money was still clean. I didn't get a chance to check before the show. John Reese Plumlee's going in, and I'm not going to say it like I said it last week that Mikey Keene's going to go out there and play this beautiful game because that is no guarantee because we know what Mikey Keene is. As much as I want to hype him up, still unpolished, but he could be an uncut gem. We never know. But what I do like about this UCF team in all seriousness is it is amazing how from Frost to Heupel, this team was all offense and they really struggled fundamentally on defense, tackling, coverage. And those were the reasons they gave up a ton of points. Yes, pace and tempo also. When your defense is on the field that much, it's hard to defend. In 2 years, Gus Malzahn brought this team that was, an afterthought on defense to a team who is getting serious defensive consideration as one of the best defenses in the conference. And I think that's going to be able to help them kind of mask some of their issues at quarterback should Mikey Keene play. I like UCF to win this one. I just went safe plus 1.5 just in case of 1 point victory. But yeah, give me UCF. What do you like going?
Well, I'm going to let Eric go because I want to be the tiebreaker between the two. But actually, I'll say this first because this is one hell of a stat that I found. It was so good. I brought it up on Thursday's Bet the Edge podcast. Great listen if you guys don't subscribe to that. But listen to this. This game between UCF and Tulane will mark the first time that a ranked Tulane team hosts another ranked team since November 26th of 1949.
Holy smokes.
The last team they played, number 13 LSU going to number 10 Tulane, and it was an SEC matchup. All right. That's how long it's been for Tulane to host another ranked team. So this is a huge game. Huge game.
Yeah, that's very fair. Gosh, now I actually, feel bad for giving Brad a little bit of heat about the UCF game being up here, being one of our featured. Okay. No,
I picked this game to be on the rundown. I was like, we got to talk about UCF Tulane. Like, this is a huge game.
We just got the splits in for this. 81% of the bets on Tulane, 92% of the handle on Tulane. Holy smokes.
Wow. Well, I'll
Eric,
say this.
How you feeling?
I'll say this. I do want to have a mea culpa here because last week you and I, Vaughn, did kind of poo-poo Mikey Keene when our good friend Brad brought him up. But let's give credit where credit's due to Mr. Keene. All right? 22 of 28 passing, 219 yards, completed 79% of his throws with 3 touchdowns and just 1 interception. Had an 85.3 passing grade according to PFF. That is, call it what it is. Brad called it. Brad touted Mikey Keene. Mikey Keene delivered for his fellow UCF Golden Knight. So, hey, much respect, Brad. I got to give you your due. That being said, I want to make sure I dug into the numbers on Mr. Keene because forgive me if I have some appropriate skepticism, as Ronald Reagan once said, trust but verify. So Mr. Keene, when he dropped back, of his 30 dropbacks, he was only pressured in 5 of them. Okay, so UCF was able to pretty much handle that Memphis rush pretty easy. And Memphis isn't known for their potentially stout defense. Okay, let's go to that. That being said, hey, Tulane's in town, or you're actually in town in Tulane. You're going to New Orleans. So enjoy, Bourbon Street, but then it's time because the Green Wave's defense is light years better than what Mikey Keene faced last week against Memphis, okay? 19th against the rush, 24th against the pass, top 25 in success rate, yards per pass, only allowing 1.5 point per drive. That's 15th in the country. They're allowing less than 5 yards per play. This defense has been legit, and we know that what they want to do on offense is very clear. This is Willie Fritz, okay? He wants to run the ball and control the line of scrimmage. Last game for Tulane, 2 100-yard rushers, okay? That's bad news for UCF. Bad news, okay? You don't want them controlling the clock like they did in that fashion. You have a backup quarterback against what is, in my estimation, the second best defense in the ACC. Should be AAC besides probably only Cincinnati. Tulane's legit, okay? Yeah. They're not playing any games out there. I am backing Tulane because I think they're able to get more pressure on Mikey Keene, and they're able to make him make decisions under duress that he simply hadn't been able to before. We hadn't seen that level of performance out of Keene in anything, in the entire previous season where he started every game in relief of Dylan Gabriel. I don't think he's going to be able to keep it up against Tulane on the road, hostile environment, big spot. I'm taking the wave.
Yeah, I'm riding the wave too.
Oh,
As someone who's on the UCF win total over 8.5, we need 2 wins in the last 3 weeks to cash it. I'm not confident they're getting the win here. As I told you, those road games are not worth back, and now you got back-to-back road spots, and it's Tulane. Like, that's now ranked, huge game for them, hosting a ranked conference opponent. Yeah, this is a Tulane or pass, and when you just said the handle, the money coming in, 92% of the handle is on Tulane. That's not exactly like the public. That's heavy hitters saying this is Tulane's time, and they're going to be the best team in the conference. And someone who's holding a UCF conference ticket, I think Tulane
not
is the best
confident.
team in the AAC. No, I think Tulane. I've watched Tulane play 4 or 5 games now, and every week I'm like,
They're
defense,
impressive.
for real,
They're impressive.
offense, balanced. Like, they do everything well. And UCF, like, as they do, we've seen a couple games in particular, the second half, they can die off. And Tulane, I think they're coming all game. They're going to be excited. So I'm with Eric on this one. I'll break the tiebreaker.
Oh, breaks the tiebreaker.
But I would take the money line. I don't bet -1, 1.5. That's a terrible line, in my opinion. But I'll say this, at FanDuel, the -1.5 is -105 odds. The money line for either team is -110. So obviously you would just take the Tulane -110. So if you don't do that, you should be doing that more often.
All right, Eric, answer this question real quick. Is Huggins still playable at 35.5?
Oh, geez, 35.5. Oh, boy. Okay, guys. Welcome to my world when it comes to moving lines 14.5 down. That is brutal. Wow. Okay. 35.5. I don't want to say he had 33, I believe, last game. This is off the top of my head. And I want to say he had like 19 or so the game before. As stated, it's like Xavier, X-Man, 9 routes last week. 26 to 20 to 9. In the fourth quarter is when most of them were run. Most of his yardage came late in the fourth quarter. Didn't start. I think he probably sprinkled a little on it. I think he's still, maybe not as hard as I probably went at 49.5, because I went pretty, the clip was opened. Let's just put it that way. But still, I still think it's a play, because I just think it's reps. It's a reps play. And if he isn't getting the reps and he isn't getting it done, it should have been at 35.5 all along. It's the problem. That's reasonable. I still think it's an under. I still think he can do it.
He had 25
Not
and
as hard
24 in the past 2 games. So,
all right, sprinkle it. Let's go to moneyline sprinkles. I'll start with this one. North Carolina plus 165 at Wake Forest. I was a little shocked. I thought I was going to get around plus 110. I'm all on the Drake May fan club. This dude is going to be a Heisman Trophy winner before it's all said and done. Yeah. He is electric. And if you guys remember, week 1, I thought that week 1, even though he had massive numbers, was a little unsettled, threw some turnover-worthy balls, but the kid just continues to get better, and he continues to push the envelope every single game. I just don't trust Sam Hartman in a shootout anymore, because the difference between May and Hartman in terms of skill, if you want to back the guy who has the more talent, more skill in a shootout, it's going to be Drake May. So give me North Carolina plus 165.
Yeah, and I am all over the pretty much everything North Carolina when it comes to Drake May. Early in the week, PrizePicks will put him out there at 310.5. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
In this game against Wake Forest, will there be a punt? I don't know. I think it's is there a prop out there? I can take no punts for this game, like UCLA and Oregon did earlier this year. I think there's one. I'm interested in that particular wager. So. I love Downs. Downs was actually at 86.5 at DraftKings last night. I thought that was unbelievable. I put out my column. He's up to 93, 94 and a half. If you can get it under 90, I still think that's a smoking deal. Antoine Green, he's been excellent. Like they pretty much to throw to those two guys. Green would have sailed over his 60 mark last game if he had a ball in the end zone, caught, it's in his hands, he's open, he's bringing it down. As he's bringing it down, like his knee went up, and he literally just went bang, just kneed the ball right out of his hands. He doesn't have that. It was like a 35-yard touchdown. He sails over it, and this is probably an 80 and a half. I love it at 61 and a half there. North Carolina is not going to stop scoring. I think just anything team total, you can pretty much pound.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to have a lot to say about that game a little later. I think we're all going to be having a lot to talk about that game. My ladders are in that game. I mean,
okay.
Trying to make money on overs, that's clearly the game to beat. We just run it back with our two teams. I mean, at this point, these teams should not be underdogs in conference play. North Texas is 6-1 ATS as a road underdog since the start of last year. They have just been rolling. San Diego State, 10-3 ATS is a home dog in the last 13. They've won 8 of those games outright. I'm loving that the plus money. I'm going to talk about these games in detail and why I'm backing these two teams. But, if you're looking for the money line sprinkles, look no further. The Mean Green and the Aztecs, baby. They just continue cashing for us. It's not going to stop.
Do.
The train's not going to stop.
They keep cashing all of the time. Eric, what's your money line sprinkle?
Well, respectfully, Vaughn, yes, San Diego State, did they cash? Yeah. Against UNLV without Doug Brumfield, okay, without their starting quarterback, yes, they were able to eke out a 14-10 win behind a converted defensive player who is now their starting quarterback, Jaden Maiden. I think it stops. I think this is it.
You think San Jose
Hard
State
stop.
gets the dub?
Hard stop.
San Jose State?
I live
San
2
Jose
miles
State
from that
gets
stadium.
Nevada? Huh?
2 miles from that stadium, okay? I can't even go and watch those games when I'm offered free tickets. It's just like, I got to sit in the sun. There's no shade. The sun's beating down on us all over the place. I have to watch that offensive performance. No. I'm going to sit in the comfort of my home and do that. Anyways,
So,
San Jose State.
But San Jose State, you like them after what we've seen the past 2 weeks.
After that scintillating performance against
Nevada and Colorado State, it's like
Colorado State has a decent defense. Okay, so I can forgive that. Okay, but I just think this is too much. Like, you actually have a competent quarterback who's been proven over the past 3 years to actually be able to throw the ball with a spiral forward. That's just very basic. I can trust Chevon Conero to do that, and he's also mobile. I like Kyrie Robinson. I took his over last week. That worked out just fine. And also Elijah Cooks and the Justin Lockhart combo. I like both of those guys in terms of their passing attack. I think they're going to be just fine against San Diego State because the Aztecs just can't move the ball. And I just think they're not going to be able to handle playing from behind. If San Jose State gets up just 2 scores, it's just 10-0. That is an insurmountable lead against the San Diego State Aztecs, who just simply are inept when it comes to their offense. I'm sorry. I've watched too much of that horrible team that I respectfully, Vaughn and I are battling.
But you didn't feel that way when they were playing Fresno State. Like, we were texting, and you were enjoying the offensive performance up until the defense started letting them down. And while I agree the UNLV game was ugly, but that was the first time San Diego State was playing at home in a month. And it was homecoming. I mean, that's as exciting as that is. It's a lot to live up to sometime. But, I mean, I love the position that this is their first time being back-to-back home games since week 1 and 2 of the season. Like, you haven't been in the same place for 2 weeks all year, essentially. So, I don't know. I do hear you, but give me San Diego State plus the 3 in the money line.
It's all good. A little disagreement.
Yeah, no, that's what it was.
We'll fight between me and Vaughn.
Yeah.
Buying each other food. We're keeping each other fit, you know what I'm saying, mentally and physically with the burger and pizza bets. Not as much the pizza, but the burgers.
Well, we got some burgers coming. I guess we got 2 burger bets. So I'm up 2 on the burger bet count.
Okay.
It might be down to none this week. Or it might be just an absolute.
Might be up 4-0.
The biggest burger, the Angus double beef.
Yeah. It's like, who's the guy in the Popeye cartoons? Was it? I forget who was. It wasn't Bluto, was it? Maybe it was Bluto. But it was the guy who ate all the hamburgers with the hat. You know, that guy. Okay, forget
Yeah, unless
it.
you're talking about the
Archaic
Hamburglar,
cartoon reference. Yeah, boomer, shut up.
Anyways,
I
I
was a
want to drop
McDonald's
some
kid,
news.
so
I want to drop
Yeah,
some news for
Hamburglar.
you
We'll be
guys.
Hamburglar. That's what I'll be. Done. We'll go with that reference.
KJ Jefferson is not throwing in warmups. FYI, the
Yes.
line is quickly on the move.
Of course it
I
is.
just checked it.
Coming.
4, 5 in some places. So I don't know. I'm not.
on FanDuel.
I'm not a big fan of betting, like riding the line movement. I think those are some of the line. Those are some of the things that you want to get in kind of early, because I do think it's kind of baked in. But just anybody who's looking at that LSU game and had any reservations, there's still some 3.5s available. FanDuel, DraftKings, BetRivers all have 3.5s available.
FanDuel just moved. I just watched it move to 4.5 on FanDuel.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
just
literally
did.
moving as we speak.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's a
That's
good bet.
bad
I agree
news.
with Brad. I don't want to give into a bunch of line movement, but this is a game that's probably a good one. I
Yeah.
did get burned earlier in the year when I took Virginia at home against Louisville when Willie Cunningham got announced out.
Yeah.
They lost outright in that game. So, I wouldn't go crazy and think it's a lock necessarily, but I do think LSU's the right side.
Eric, since you want to talk about some locks, let's talk about the play that you have in Cal at Oregon State.
Yes. Well, we have freshman running back Jaden Ott for Cal. Now, the reason why I'm on Mr. Ott here is we've seen he had I think the biggest performance outside of Quinshon Judkins, the sensational freshman who is RB1 right now from the 2025 class. Ott had a 233-yard explosion 6 weeks ago. I mean, he absolutely arrived on the scene in spectacular fashion. But since then, he had 20 carries for 70 yards the game after that. But in the 4 games subsequent to that 20 game, carries, 70 yards, he has failed to hit this 59.5-yard mark, the tops being 57. But we've seen his usage dwindle. He's getting between 12 and 14 carries. But they're playing an Oregon State team at Oregon State. Going to be raining. Most likely it is the Pacific Northwest. But Oregon State plays at the 5th slowest pace in the country. Damian Martinez, their bell cow freshman, another sensational freshman running back. Damian Martinez has taken over for Deshaun Fenwick, who's pretty much been relegated to a short yardage role. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing in terms of Oregon State. They're controlling the clock as good as any team in the country. Devastating line. Been able to do pretty much whatever they want. And I just think that it's a case where that game is going to be shortened. Cal has been struggling on significantly running the ball. They've had to pretty much rely on Jack Plummer to put the ball in the air a lot, which is exposing them because Jack Plummer is not the kind of caliber quarterback you want throwing 40 times a game. But they got Jeremiah Hunter, they got J. Michael Sturdivant, who are both really good receivers, and it's what they've kind of had to do in order to be able to mount any kind of an offense. So I just think that with the game script, with Ott having not touched 60 yards in the last 5 games, because of that, sort of come down off the sugar high of 233 yards, I just don't see him being able to cross the 60-yard threshold.
Sweet. I'm going to lock that in if it's still available. I'm going to check that. Vaughn, you're going back to one of your super beasts. Versus UAB.
Yes. Like I said, North Texas, baby. We love them. We love everything about them. Speaking of a quarterback who we kind of disrespected early in the season, we didn't know if he was going to be great. He was probably going to be the reason why this team didn't live up to potentially winning its conference championship. Austin On from North Texas. What has he done the last 3 games? Talk about a robo-cannon arm.
Yes.
This guy is going crazy. 1,061 yards, 11 touchdowns, 2 picks. I mean, then you look at what UAB just allowed to happen to them. UTSA's quarterback threw for 285 and 4 touchdowns. Florida Atlantic's quarterback threw for 3 touchdowns, about 200 yards. I am a little concerned to be a UAB backer, and people continue backing UAB, and they haven't looked good the past 3 weeks. They've lost all 3 games. They've made a quarterback switch to Jacob Zeno, but UAB this year has lost by 3, has lost by 7, has lost by 6, has lost by 4, has lost by 7. If you're betting UAB, you're betting the Las Vegas Raiders of college football. All right, a team that's continually playing close games. They're either going to lose by single digits or they're going to win by single digits. And speaking of that, my final point: last year, UAB and North Texas met early in the season. UAB won 40-6. That was before North Texas went on that long streak where they won games. Before that, 2017, 18, 19, every single game was decided by one possession. So, again, North Texas can win this game. Give me the Mean Green plus the 6.
Mean Green plus the 6. I'm going to Alabama at Ole Miss. And no, I am not backing the Crimson Tide. I'm taking Ole Miss plus 12. In the last 10 head-to-heads between these two teams, Ole Miss is 7-3 against the spread. Alabama in their last 6 games on the road, 1-5 against the spread. The reason Alabama, I like this game for Ole Miss, dual threat quarterback Jackson Dart. Alabama has historically struggled against dual threat quarterbacks, even so much this season. It's the defense for me that's really stinking for this Alabama team. And you know you have some problems in the secondary when the coach is openly saying that he's going to give other guys a chance. It's because these guys can't cover anybody. And I don't think it's the players on the field. You have a ton of 5 stars on both sides of the ball. I think he's just not getting enough out of his players. This game will have way more implications should somehow LSU fall in the early window. So I think it will change the motivation for a lot of players. But if LSU wins their game, the only team that's going to be motivated in this game is going to be Ole Miss, because Alabama is going to be destined for a New Year's Six bowl at best. So yes, go ahead, give me Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin, he's buddies with Nick Saban, but he wants to beat his former coach, his former head coach, colleague Nick Saban so bad. I just feel this is a bad spot for Alabama. It's not a bad Alabama team, but motivation is not there.
It's the worst Alabama team we've seen in 10 years, arguably.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just not performing. Teams are taking advantage right now.
I would say not as bad as that team that went to the Citrus Bowl. What year was that? They played Michigan. That team was really bad. That team was really bad.
Who was the quarterback? Was it
man,
I forget what his name is, because he was number 14 or something.
I can't even remember. Was that Jake Coker year 1, and then Jake Coker ended up winning the national championship the next year in year 2? I think so.
Might have been.
Legendary Jake Coker.
Yeah, legendary Jake Coker, the Florida State guy. Eric, go over to your play in Oklahoma. And also, when you give this play, I want to know what you think about the spread in this game, because I've had a lot of people ask me, and I was really torn.
Yeah, fair enough. In terms of the play, I like, dude, Drake Stoops listed on DraftKings at 40.5 receiving yards is malpractice. Okay, that is absolutely cannot happen. Pack your things in a box and be escorted to the nearest exit level line on Drake Stoops. Okay. Listen, I appreciate his dad, Bob Stoops, for what he did as a coach, but I mean, nepotism is not going to help you cash this over at 40.5 receiving yards. Last week, 3 of 5 against Baylor, 13 yards. Previous week against Iowa State, 3 targets, 3 catches, 34. The one time all season he cleared 40.5 yards was 3 weeks ago at Kansas. He got an astounding 6 targets, which is high all season, caught 4 for 43. The lone over is 43 yards out of 9 games. He's 1-8 on that, and barely cleared it when he did against Kansas in a game that was a shootout. I'm sorry. That you can't have that. You can't put Drake Stoops at 40.5 receiving yards. If he goes over, great. I will eat that. I will accept it. I apologize to all of you, but give me a break here. This is hung at 115, minus 115 and 40.5 yards. I don't know what it's at now. I don't know if it's been changed since this morning. I assume I can't be the only person who noticed how horrible that line is. So if it still exists, please, take the free money.
It's a high total in that game. That's 68.5. And West Virginia's in conference play. I think they're 4-1 to the over, something like that. So
yeah, West Virginia.
That's probably why all the player props are just a little bit enhanced. They're adding a couple extra yards on everybody's.
31.5.
They're going to need to do more.
31.5 now.
31.5.
Yeah, 31.5. Yeah, well, that was inevitable. I also, speaking of that game, JT Daniels, Garrett Green came in towards the end of the last game. We'll see. JT Daniels is a little banged up, and I think we could see Garrett Green, because what do they have to lose at this point? Why bother why to try something else for West Virginia, Neil Brown. So actually, Neil Brown I think is gone, but yeah, I love it. I like the under on JT Daniels as well over there at West Virginia because of the unsettled nature of the QB position. So there's a little twofer in that game.
A little twofer.
Okay. Vaughn, go into your next pick.
Let's go to the quarterback position to make this fun. Let's go to Sam Hartman, over 328.5 passing yards, which is definitely on the move on FanDuel. I am now in an illegal betting state, so I can't have access to player props for college football. But last time I saw this is up to 335, 336. We also like Drake May in that game. We're going to take his over 325 and a half yards. And then, like I said, we'd have the ladder. The ladder play, though, this is only on FanDuel. Do you guys know of any other places that do ladders and let you do alternative lines?
I just do FanDuels or offshores.
Yes, FanDuel's the place for the ladders.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll get the odds for you guys updated, but they were plus 410 and plus 340 for them both to throw for 400 yards. But if you look at what Sam Hartman has done as a Demon Deacon against North Carolina, 1 year he had 398 passing yards and 5 touchdowns with 2 picks. He threw 51 times. The next time they met, he decided that he was going to throw only 45 times. And for that, he threw 429 yards and 4 touchdowns. Okay, and then we see Drake May this year. We've all talked up Drake May. He's going to be at least my Heisman pick next year, early season bet. I did bet him at 80-1, and this year I knew he had no chance. But after I saw 2 games, I love this guy. 300-plus passing yards in 6 out of 9 games this season. The 3 unders, 294, 284, and 293. All right, this guy is electric in every sense of the way. Our NBC model has these 2 quarterbacks at 343 and 333. So they both have them going over. And like I said, you can get their ladders at plus 410 and plus 340 at 400 passing yards for not only Drake May, but Sam Hartman in a game with an over-under total of 79. What's not to like?
Love it. I'm going to add a play. I'm taking this little juicy Mayan Williams over 89.5 rushing yards, minus 145. I know the juice sucks, but I don't want to play a line at that minus 110 for the 100. Listen, I've been checking this weather all week. It's snowing or whatever, the snowing version, when it snows and then melts. It snows and then melts. It's cold. He's going to get the ball 20, 30 times in this game. You saw him last week when we were sweating out that massive bet. So I'm on Mayan Williams. And I'll roll quickly into my next bet. This is my biggest bet of the weekend. Georgia at Mississippi State. The method of the first score, Georgia touchdown plus 110. It's hit in every game but 2 for Georgia. And so this was a weather play at first, but also backed on Mississippi State, much like the game we talked about earlier, has one of the highest touchdown rates on defense. And offensively, I don't expect them to score very easily on this Georgia team. So for me, it's getting better value on Georgia being the first team to score because Georgia's not kicking a field goal against this Mississippi State defense. They're going and they're pushing it straight down their throats. That's plus 110. It was funny because when the hurricane came, the books took it down. And I was like, oh, yes, we're going to get good CLV. And then now the hurricane's not even going in that direction. But it's still 8-mile-per-hour winds, which I don't even factor into my handicap on this game because it's going to be Georgia's going to score and score a lot. Mississippi State will be lucky to get a field goal in this game.
Yeah, this actually gives me like Alabama, Mississippi State vibes.
Yeah.
Like when I watched that Alabama game and I realized how bad Mississippi State's offense is against a quality defense, I was like, there's no way. I lied bet the team total under 9.5 for Mississippi State. They scored a touchdown on their very last drive of the game.
Yeah.
Finished with 6. So, yeah, I'm with you here. I like that play a lot. I think that's sharp.
Awesome. Go into your next play, Vaughn.
Let's go to the Broncos. Boise State playing one of the worst college football programs in the country in Nevada. Don't know if I need to spend too much time talking about it, but like we said, we love what Taylor Green and Boise State have been doing. 4-1 ATS in the past 5. They did lose last week against BYU in the final seconds on a very questionable touchdown that was reviewed, but the total in this game dropped from 54.5 down to 46.5 because people don't think Nevada is going to score. Nevada's only scored 7 points and 14 points against San Diego State and Colorado State at home this year against FBS opponents. So sign me up for Boise State on the big spread.
Eric, go ahead and give me your next pick, please. please, sir.
Right. Well, we're coming up against it here. I'll try to rattle off a couple here. Dominic Richardson, running back, Oklahoma State, under 68.5 rushing yards. As we've actually had him on here a couple times a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
After their game against TCU, where he had 22 carries, 72 yards, that was his fourth game in a row under 3.5 yards per carry. We saw Mike Gundy came out. He was lamenting the lack of explosiveness in their running game. That is not at all typical of Oklahoma State. They're 100th in terms of overall rushing performance. That is just, you never see that. After he came out and said they needed a little more, the past 2 weeks, week 8 against Texas, 13 carries, 25 yards, was basically a short yardage back, had 3 touchdowns, averaged 1.9 yards per carry. He's kind of filed into that role. Last week, 14 carries, 51 yards against Kansas. Again, 3.6 yards per carry. We've seen more of Ollie Gordon. They have 2 sensational 4-star freshman running backs behind Richardson. We've seen more of them, and I think we're going to continue. This is simply too high at 68.5, especially considering, look, they're playing Iowa State. Iowa State has the number 8th ranked rush defense in the country, number 11th overall. They slow the game down and grind it out. That's just a bad game script for Dominic Richardson. Give me the under on that. And as well, if you can get in real quick, Jaden Daniels, quarterback, LSU. I think the game script, as we talked about with Malik Hornsby being in there, LSU's not going to have to throw the ball and be behind. I just can't possibly see that happen. 270.5 passing yards. He only cleared that twice. One of them was Tennessee, where they had to throw because they were down early and often and had to come back. The other one was against Florida. I just think game script-wise, they're not going to have to do it. All right, we know how bad Arkansas is against the rush. We know how bad that defense is. Sure, he'll make some plays in the air, but he ain't going to have to do 270.5. They're going to be into salt the game away mode since I don't see Malik Hornsby being able to move the ball.
I agree. I like that. Vaughn, do you have any more plays you want to rattle off for us before we get going?
I do not have any other plays, but I know Eric does actually still have a couple.
I do have one. Trey Palmer,
go ahead.
wide receiver, Nebraska, at Michigan. 52.5 receiving yards. They are not starting Casey Thompson. He's out of the game. We're going to have a 2-headed monster of Hubba Chubba Purdy and Logan Smothers brothers. Each of them do not possess the passing acumen required to be able to move the ball in Ann Arbor against Michigan. That's why we've seen this under crater. I mean, the under is literally good luck hitting that over. And I just think, even though I really like the talent level of Trey Palmer, he doesn't have anybody getting the ball to him. He went under last game. He's going to go under again. It's just how it is. You have to be able to throw the ball.
Yeah, I actually have one thing before we get out of here because we didn't even mention it. Spencer Petras almost leading the Big Ten in passing yards last week.
Oh, my God, yeah.
He plays Wisconsin. Plays Iowa. Graham Mertz, 162.5 passing yards. Spencer Petras, 169.5 passing yards. Higher than Mertz, which shocked me. What are we doing, guys? Are we going under on both these guys, right?
Out of principle.
Yeah, I think we have to.
Principle, absolutely.
At worst, we split. We probably could get
both.
At worst,
I
we
looked at their
split.
stats from last year. One had 103 yards. The other one had 94. And I was like, this is going to be worse this year. They might, like Graham Mertz, people thought he was going to be much improved this year because he's throwing touchdowns.
Yeah.
But it's
this
bad.
Is yardage, baby. Yardage.
Yeah.
The only person who loses on that is anybody who has to watch that game. That's the only people who lose.
Marty wants to bet the over. Is that the game Marty wants to bet the over?
Marty.
No, it's an under. If it's 40 or under, you just auto bet the under.
Yeah, do not do it. I'm on Oregon minus 13.
You're going to be so mad asking yourself, can Spencer Petras lead a 60-yard drive? No.
No, he cannot.
Not against Wisconsin.
Not against Wisconsin. Guys, I'm on Oregon minus 13. I'm going to play Bo Nix rushing yards. I want to kind of see what it settles at, but if you want to play the team total, I think that's good too. It's going to be a massive shootout. I just really love what Oregon is doing. They have their eye set on the prize. Since that Georgia game, they've been absolutely unstoppable. Bo Nix is a legitimate Heisman candidate. And that's all I have. Guys, thank you, everyone who tuned in. We will see you next week. For Vaughn and Eric, I'm Brad Thomas. Take care.